I have been on first day virtually and on site with students, interns, getting their computer, having to access Outlook. And there are those that are prepared who thrive, and there are those that fall a little short, and that's their first day. We love when we can see students have more confidence in some of the foundational skills that we take for granted. How can we be involved and lean into the work of creating spaces for students to learn those skills so that they are candidates for internships, for scholarships, for life after high school?
Hello and welcome to the Future is Clear, Teach Like It's 2045 webcast series. My name is Scott Carr from CESA 2. Today's topic area is outcomes-driven work-based learning, becoming intentional with how you plan and implement work-based learning. Joining us today is Brooke Rice and Megan Marx from NAF. Brooke leads the charge for increasing equity and access to high-quality work-based learning and career-connected curriculum for high school students across the country as the Vice President of Curriculum and Work-Based Learning at NAF. Throughout her career, she has worked at the local, state, and national levels to create resources, provide training, and implement programs to help students achieve their career goals and connect them to businesses who are looking for innovative ways to skill their future talent pipeline. Megan is the Assistant Director of Academy Development at NAF. She supports districts and schools nationwide in their implementation of NAF design and takes particular interest in driving student outcomes through CTE programming. Additionally, she enjoys cross-collaborative work with colleagues and corporate partners to create work-based learning opportunities for students inside and outside the classroom. Megan joined NAF 3 years ago after working in K-12 public education as an English teacher, instructional coach, and school administrator. Most recently, she had opened the 7th high school in a large urban community in New Jersey. Megan attended Princeton and has her doctorate degree in education, leadership, management, and policy from Seton Hall. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Guys, that was a lot of information, but we got some great people joining us. I appreciate it. Very excited to have you talk a little bit about NAF and some of the great work you guys are doing. Again, I appreciate you guys joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We're excited to talk a little bit about what we do, and hopefully your audience will be able to take away a few nuggets of advice.
Yeah, great info. I know. Well, Brooke, you and I met a while back I watched your podcast with Sylvester probably at least 5 times. I'm going to tell you, at least. And I took so much from it and I kind of tweaked some of it, but I've shared a lot of that out. I think the best part, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about this as we go through the webcast, but the intentionality behind work-based learning, those 3 areas, I really walked away when I heard that and went, wow, that makes a whole lot of sense. So, and I appreciate you being along for the ride with us, Megan. We were able to meet a while back, and I'm excited to have you involved in our conference coming up in April. So I think that's gonna be great. I'd love to see the footprint of NAF spread itself in our state even more. So how's the year going for you guys? I'm real curious with an organization like NAF. Is it similar to schools? With us, September's our kickoff. It's like a season, like a sports season, and then a little bit of a downtime coming up here for winter break. But how about you guys? Busy?
Yes, we are. Yes, you're talking to 2 people who are very motivated to help students. So if students are in session or if teachers are in session, we are working hard to support them, and the work continues throughout the school year. But we're quite busy wrapping up some fall activities that we have to support our academies, inclusive of work-based learning engagements with some of our partners. And we, like the teachers and students, are just riding the wave until a little bit of a break around the holidays.
Right. Right. You guys I think you're coming off of your conference not too long ago, right? Maybe within the last month?
Our annual conference is actually in July for
Oh,
our
shoot, I was working.
organization, but we attend a lot of different conferences across the country in support of our NAF academies
Yeah,
and our continuous learning as well.
yeah, yeah. Shoot, I don't know why I was thinking that, but yeah. Well, July, and where's it going to be at this year in July?
Well, I can't say Denver. It's Aurora, Colorado.
Oh, gotcha, gotcha. Well, not a bad place to visit in July.
Absolutely.
Have to come out and maybe take a peek and get involved with that. So, yeah. So, boy, you guys have been doing a lot of great things in education, obviously, and got quite the journey. Obviously, I didn't spread out the history of both of you, but why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about, about your journey? How did you get where you're at?
Megan, you want to go first?
Sure. I mean, I can share that I was someone who was motivated to be part of education because I wanted students to have the kind of educational experience I did with teachers who cared and experiences that helped me grow. Sounds a little corny, but it is absolutely the truth. My mission is to drive student success, especially for students who need the additional supports to have that success. So I was a public educator. I was very happy to be a teacher and then serve in a sort of peer support role as an instructional coach, not in CTE, actually, as an English teacher. I am a classicist turned CTE enthusiast. So having studied Latin and ancient Greek, thinking I was going to be a Latin teacher, I have made my way into the CTE world and I'm happy to be here. Worked it as an administrator and incorporated CTE programming into my school as a core content. So I think that's kind of an important thing to do if you want to grow your CTE program. It's got to become part of the culture of your school-wide. So when you're reviewing math and language arts data, you also need to review that CTE data. When you're looking at pathways towards success and you're talking about methods to increase student attendance, decrease chronic absenteeism, or decrease retention rates, you can look to CTE programming to be that solution and that change agent that will drive data, and that data needs to be shared out. I was the principal of a distinguished NAF Academy of Finance. I created a school-wide program. I say I, but it was absolutely a team effort in my building, and I'm so thankful for the great teachers. Shout out to Elizabeth, New Jersey, Bulwidge teachers who worked hard with me, and the students too who committed to the program. And then when I realized I wanted to make even more of a difference and do that in the CTE, in a way that I could support CTE programming more broadly, the natural transition for me was to come to NAF. And I've really enjoyed being able to engage at a nationwide level and regionally with folks regarding their CTE work.
Yeah. Wow, it sounds like a great journey, and it really seems like you fit perfectly for NAF with that, right? With that experience. How about you,
We're
Brooke?
glad to have her.
Yeah, I'm sure you are.
So a little bit about me. I, like many people, grew up thinking I knew what I wanted to do, but didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I think, having that anxiety in high school about I know I'm going to college, but I'm not sure what I'm going for, is one that resonates with a lot of high school students even today. And so when I got into teaching, I really found, a passion for helping students. And I was probably like most of our NAF staff, I was an overachiever. I was a business and marketing education instructor at the high school level for over 10 years. I was a DECA advisor. I was a swim coach. I did all of the things.
Wow.
And I just looked across, our student body and was like, we've got a couple of internships this year. That's awesome. But then looked around and said, that's not enough for our students. And so my CTE director and I actually found NAF and brought NAF back to our rural North Carolina community. That district now has 8 NAF academies, which is great. And, for me, I found NAF and was like, hey, I want to learn more about what's happening in education across the country, and I want to help more. So how can I kind of channel that passion into this work? And I've been with NAF for 11 years. So
wow, that's impressive longevity. That's really
absolutely.
great. It's really great. Well, one of the things we talk a lot about with all the guests that we have on is the why. Kind of, we look at the relationship with this work, and you guys have done a lot of great things. And you spoke to this a little bit, Brooke, as you through your journey here. Why do we see the need for change in education to move towards a career readiness approach? Why do you think the need is there for that?
I could start us off. I think the big thing for me is, why are we doing this anyway, right? Like, what is the point for students? Is it to herd them through classes for a well-rounded education with seat time requirements? Like, is that the end goal? Like, once we get to the graduation line, is that the end goal? Have we done our jobs?
Right.
And I think, across students, parents, community partners, industry partners, educators, like all of us know that's not really why we're here, but we have a struggle with like trying to operate in the current system that's existed for a long time. But if we really look at it from a student perspective, it's how are we shaping them to be their best prepared selves for whatever's next, right? Like at 18, we just kind of turn them loose as adults and say, go up. And really, like, what can we do as an ecosystem of support to help them learn about themselves, explore what they like, explore what they're good at, and then help them find the bridge to what's next. And I think, as an educator, that was important to me in the ways that I helped my students. I see that in my own son today of like herding him into CCE programs and career readiness. And I think it's just one of those things that, if we look at it from a community or a society perspective, getting students prepared to become adults who can contribute to our global good is the most important priority. So let's rethink about what we do in an institutional space to make that more of an outcome that we see for 100% of our students and not just like a select few.
Yeah, it is, and it's a tough shift, right? I mean, when I get out and do the work that I'm doing, I call it a conditioning. We're conditioning as educators to kind of do what we know and what we've been taught, so that shift can really be hard. Megan, what do you believe with a shift, right, in a career readiness direction? What do you believe the impacts can be?
Well, I mean, the impact, I take everything in education back to teaching and learning. So the impact is on the teachers and the learners. And for students, the impact is measured in graduation, in promotion to the next grade, in belonging. I'm a big believer in Maslow's hierarchy of need, and we cannot create a space for learning in education unless we create a space where students feel like they have a place, a sense of belonging. And so I think CTE for many students is that place where they find a sense of belonging, which does open the door to other learning possibilities in CTE and outside of CTE, in other coursework and in some of the work-based learning experiences or extracurricular opportunities. I think the impact is on students who might just be trying to survive high school, shifting to, I have a life outside of high school, and here's what that might look like. That is probably the moment that gives me the goosebumps, is when, a student hasn't been thinking beyond high school or has been pushed to think that the traditional four-year program, post-secondary program of college is the answer. While it may be the answer, we're often pushing students in that direction without some sort of guidance in terms of how do we connect our aspirations to what we can do in college? How do we connect what maybe our professional goals or are 10 to 15 years out with what I'm going to do in the next year to 4 years? And so I think we can see some big impact in alignment of the post-secondary program and just life for students. And then for teachers, there is some amazing work happening in CT education. And I think it's time that we recognize what CTE teachers are bringing to schools. They are the classroom that is packed. They're the reason why students are showing up to the building. They are keeping up with trends. And I think that we have to make that more present and more build awareness around that so that we can recognize the work of these teachers and connect them more with industry professionals and partners who can support the work that they're doing. Because what we certainly understand is that we cannot teach these students in isolation. We need to expose them to life outside of the classroom.
And Megan, I would just piggyback on that for just a second, because I think
sure.
As a former English teacher yourself, right? Like, and when we were creating our academy in North Carolina, I remember meeting with my English teacher who was going to be part of the academy experience. And, she was a little on the fence of like, well, I'm not really sure this is for me. And I'm like, like, you're creative, you care about your students. Like, let's talk about this. And one of the things that I remember saying to her that made it like click for her, I was like, what do you want for your students? And she was like, I want them to be good humans, and I want them to read, and I want them to like go to college. And I was like, and then what? Like, the end goal is not college. Like, if you're in college for a long time, that's a very expensive endeavor. Like, it's to go to school for a particular reason, if that's your path, right? And so really having that of like, it's not just about CTE. CTE, I think, gets a lot of love in this space because we're very career focused and very like, what's next for students. But our core teachers also play a role in that of like, the skills that they're giving them have value in their career spaces, but how do we make that more explicit for students to say, you're learning this in English and this is how it's going to apply to your future work, right? Like, I think that's a piece that we need to like really thread through. Our teachers are all here, our partners are here for support for the students. Let's be on the same page about what that looks like.
Yeah, it's funny because that's exactly what I was going to ask as Megan was talking. I was going to ask, our core subject area teachers, sometimes I think we put cart in front of the horse, where we put a lot of focus on the achievement-based courses, if you would, right? And students can't see the relevance sometimes behind that, which then leads to disengagement. But I love how you shape that, Brooke, where we have to include, our core subject areas in these conversations, and try to figure out how the relationship can happen. What do you, either one of you, what do you feel would work to help teachers move in this direction? How do we get that to happen?
Yeah, I think it has to be a school-wide, community-wide, district-wide conversation, most successfully with NAF programming, and I think with any initiative, CTE or otherwise, that you bring into a school. There has to be a shared sense of the why, a shared sense of responsibility, an understanding of impact, which is why I do think there are data points around CTE work that need to be brought to the attention of all stakeholders and become part of the vernacular of a school conversation when we're talking about school improvement or school change or success rates. And we have to empower the students as well. There has to be a student voice in this work. So in my school, and I actually run them for certain districts that don't have the capacity to run them, you have to have a student advisory council, so that you can speak to them, hear from them, and understand what their needs are and interests are, to best support the program and to amplify the positive impact of the program.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, one of the things I know both of us are from NAF, so we'll talk a little bit about what NAF is. Just for your listeners, we're an educational nonprofit, national nonprofit. And really at the heart of what we do is we partner with schools, we partner with national partners to create kind of communities of practice and career academies within schools. And so, our footprint at a national level, we're operating in 34 states, serving over 100,000 students, 112,000 students this school year. And really what we're trying to do is make sure that our students are prepared for whatever is next. And we do that through the lens of, kind of work-based learning, career-connected curriculum, which includes obviously the core subjects, and really the advisory board where community partners and industry partners at a local level come together and think about what does their community need, and then all of that within the frame of the academy design. And so, we work with schools to put that together through a year of planning. Being very intentional about bringing different stakeholders together, including the student voice piece, and thinking through, with the end in mind, right? Which I love the movement to go to graduate profiles or profiles of a graduate of what are we trying to accomplish, and then how do we back map that in to what's happening in the high schools. And I think for us, work-based learning, project-based learning, tying core and CTE curriculum together is a critical piece of this. Students have to understand why what they're learning is relevant, and they have to have some time to actually experience workplaces and find out what they like, what they don't like. I think those are all really important. And at NAF, we have an approach called outcomes-driven work-based learning. Mm-hmm. And really it's focused on, not just checking the box of work-based learning to say oh, yep, we did that. We had a guest speaker, check. But it's really about how are we being intentional about planning work-based learning that's intentionally designed to help students have 3 outcomes: aspiration, skills, and connections. So how do we help them get experience and exposure to all the different career opportunities that are out there now and some in the future? And their paths to get there. How are they building skills, both technical and, soft skills, we call them future ready skills, durable skills, whatever you want to call them. And then the connections piece. And I think, with connections, we know about 70 to 85% of jobs across the country come through some form of connection.
Yeah.
And if we're not talking about that with our students, it's not just about how good you are, it's also about who you know. And that is the ability to tap into, the world around you and really be human about it, right? About the connectivity that's important to make sure that our students have the opportunities that they need to be successful. And so that's really how our network of support and our design is made. And Megan, bring your earlier point in about data. That's another huge thing that we care about. So, for us, we have an annual academy assessment where academies are kind of thinking through the standards that we have and how are we really matching that up to make sure that our students are set up for success. But we also have a work-based learning tracker, how are our students at the individual level? Do we know how many activities Scott is participating in his high school experience? And were those of value to him? So I think that's really, really what we're trying to do is data collection, yes, but really making sense of that data in the context of a local community and how are we helping students?
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good stuff. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and I think the beauty of that data, because if I'm an educator listening right now, I'm like so sick and tired of folks talking about data.
Right.
But we believe, and Brooke and I have both lived this as educators, so we're not trying to impose on you as outsiders. This is like we do see the impact in schools and the positive energy around this kind of data. This work-based learning tracker data speaks to the continuum of work-based learning. And that is something that because we're educators and we're just trying to make sure that Jose eats dinner tonight and make sure that Jennifer is not going to post on social media so that we don't have the repercussions tomorrow. And we're just trying to meet the standards that the students are being evaluated on a test I didn't make. These are the things we're worried about as educators. And so when we get an internship or we get a guest speaker, we're like, woo, thank God we have some work-based learning. But I think it's important to recognize that a well-established program of study has to include work-based learning experiences across a continuum so that a student has an introduction to the world of work and its professionals, and then scaffolds through different interactions with more sustained interaction. So maybe first a student experiences a work site tour of an organization. And the next level of engagement with that organization might be that 3 employees come in and do a panel on how to use LinkedIn to increase your networking, your professional network. And then there might be 1, 2, or 3 more interactions with that organization before maybe a student does have an opportunity to have an internship at that organization. And by then, the organization knows how to work with the students because they're familiar with the students, and the students are more prepared for that internship because they've had that interaction with that organization or with other business partners. We really, and I think that's a shift that's slowly making its way through education. And I do believe this is like a sale pitch for NAF and for Brooke and her team and the hard work that they've done. It's a shout out. Like we can't just think of work-based learning as internships anymore. We have to think about them as like a sustained continuum of opportunity for students to interact with a variety of professionals in your community, locally, regionally, and nationally. And to be able to see the data and think about that, to be able to say, oh, look, I've given my kids tons of guest speakers. Okay, but then what? A guest speaker does not equal career preparedness for students. So that's where I think the educators can benefit from some of the data and understand the impact that these activities have on students, or how to transform these activities into more robust, rigorous activities that can support a student's career understanding growth.
Yeah, that's some really good stuff too. One of the things we've initiated in the last year or so is the tracker. But sometimes I struggle around this a little bit. We put the cart in front of the horse a little bit. To your point, Megan and Brooke, I love how you outline, the intentionality behind it. And sometimes we have some things going on in our classrooms, and then we're going to go track it. I think getting to the level of what this should look like and what it's like in classrooms, even if we were to start with a CTE classroom first around work-based learning, I think is really vital. Otherwise, it's a little bit of that cognitive dissonance with our students. We don't want to give them a false impression around, this is what work-based learning is, and it's a guest speaker without intentionality around it. Talk a little bit about some examples of what this can look like at that organic level in classrooms.
Yeah, so I can start us off, Megan. I think one thing I want listeners to take away from this conversation is work-based learning is important, but it's not as hard as everyone thinks it is or talks about being. Starting small, I think, yes, having guest speakers, it's the most used work-based learning activity across our network and beyond, because it's easy to pull someone in to talk to your students for 30 minutes. If they're coming in, like I think about it from both sides, right? From a student's perspective, I've done that guest speaker experience where I pulled someone and went like, hey, like talk about your career and talk about all these things, right? And they come, and my students, I'm like knocking them like on the shoulder to be like, wake up, ask some questions. I did that early in my career, like we all, I think all do. But also for the employer partner coming into that situation, like you don't want to be set up for failure. Like I don't want to come in and talk to kids about my career trajectory and no one's interested in that. Like that's a lot of pressure. Like, so if you think about from a guest speaker experience, turning that into a skills workshop, right? So, Megan mentioned earlier about like the LinkedIn workshop, like having an employer partner come in. Yeah, they'll spend 5 minutes talking about their career trajectory and like what they do and all of that, but actually teaching the students something that is valuable for them, teaching them how to update their LinkedIn profile, or what HR is looking for when they're looking at a resume, or those kinds of things is super important. One, I know my colleague always uses the story about they had someone from a marketing department come in and show the kids her Outlook calendar of like how it's all time blocked and like what this all looks like, and then like let's do sticky notes and let's talk about like what that looks like in Outlook, and how do you organize focus time and lunch time, and like how do you calendar correctly. Like that's a life skill. That person came in, those students walked away, maybe they had a click with the aspirations piece of like, hey, that's a cool career, I'd like to learn more about that, but they definitely formed a new skill. And were hands-on during that activity. The employer partner felt like it was more meaningful and impactful, and therefore they had more warm, fuzzy feelings when they left about those students. Like it's a win-win situation. And really it is just an elevation. When you're designing a work-based learning activity, the questions you should be asking yourself are, how does this help my students' career aspirations? Help them develop their skills, help them develop connections. Like if it's not meeting any of those three things, then I wouldn't call it a great work-based learning activity.
Yeah. Probably not worth even doing sometimes.
Exactly.
Right? Absolutely. And when you think about the success of an activity, I mean, thinking about like, what is the student doing? We talk about work-based learning in terms of interaction between business partner and student, and therefore a guest speaker event where there is 30 minutes of talking and the students are sitting passively, there is limited interaction between that business partner and that student. And I think for educators, the way that we think about good educational pedagogy is no different than the way we should think about work-based learning engagements. They have to be well prepared. There has to be some preparation on the part of the teacher and students. There has to be some formative assessment that I know that phrase scares us, but it doesn't need to, because we have a reflection form that students can use. There has to be some sort of assessment of the impact of it. And during that activity, there should be nothing but good, positive energy. And we know our best lessons are when we can step back as the teacher and we observe the students engaging with the content. Work-based learning experiences need to be the same. It's a student engaging with the practitioner and the practitioner's content. So I think even though that may take a little bit of work initially, it's the time invested in that preparation is what yields just an incredible outcome experience. And for teachers who want to kind of elevate and amplify what they're doing in their classroom and be able to share it out, work-based learning experiences are a great way to showcase what's going on in your class with your students for a whole bunch of stakeholders in your school and outside community.
Yeah, that real world experience turns into them doing something real world. And it's good when they ask for more of it. And I've seen some of that in schools. Um, so yeah, that's. Let me ask you this, to either one of you. What are you seeing as those benefits to your point, Brooke, where you have intentionalized work-based learning, right? The three areas you identified. What are you seeing as benefits to students? What are you literally seeing where students you can go, wow, look at this for a kid.
We are literally seeing students who can interact with professionals as though they themselves are a professional.
Yeah.
The very example that Brooke gave of the work-based learning skills workshop, where students were learning what an Outlook calendar looks like. I have been on first day virtually and on site with students, interns, their first day getting their computer, logging on, having to access Outlook. And there are those that are prepared who thrive, and there are those that fall a little short, and that's their first day. We want students and we love when we can see students have more confidence in some of the foundational skills that we take for granted that we have learned,
Yeah.
especially for students who don't otherwise have an opportunity to learn that because they don't have their own personal network of folks that have that skill set, or because their schools aren't currently providing that. Like, how can we be involved and lean into the work of creating spaces for students to learn those skills, so that when they are candidates for internships, for scholarships, for life after high school.
And I think too, like as we mentioned earlier, like on our work-based learning tracker, we have like a reciprocal student side that says like, you were involved in this activity, like rate this activity in terms of how you felt like it impacted you in terms of aspiration, skills, and connections. And the data that we're seeing from the students' perception is just amazing. It's like, they're talking about how that activity, like the light bulb went on, right? About like, this is a career that I absolutely want to pursue. I had never known about it before, this day that we did this worksite tour, but this is the way I want to go. Didn't know that was possible. And then we have the students who, you can really hear the anxiety in their written words, talking about like, I thought I was going to have to pick a career and then I was going to like be in that career forever. And I'm not sure exactly what I want to do. And I learned from this guest speaker that we had that, they kind of zigzagged right through a bunch of different careers before they found their fit. And like, knowing that I don't have to make this life choice at 18 makes me feel better, right? Like just hearing that from someone else. And then, we have a lot of alumni over our 45-year history where they will point to work-based learning specifically as that activity was the pivotal point for me.
Wow.
I met someone there who now helped me get my internship. And then I was able to get a first job, from this person. Or like, I learned that I absolutely do not want to do that activity, that career. And man, I'm glad I learned that when I'm 16 and not when I'm 22, finishing up my college degree. So like, there's a lot of like, it's a lot of relief, a lot of ahas. It's just a lot of positive energy. And the second point I will make too is, on our side for teachers, they see all of that data and that's informing their work-based learning plan.
Yeah.
So they're able to see that and be like, man, that didn't hit right with my students. Like, what do I need to do next? Or this was a really good activity, and a lot of my students felt like they really grew their communication skills. Like that's one in ROI, right? Of like, ooh, okay, I did it. They didn't just like have fun. They actually did something, that they felt like was important, and that I can use that information to make sure that my students are getting prepared like they need to be prepared.
Yeah, that's just great information. It's interesting. I was in conducting a workshop, and we were talking about just this kind of information or this type of work-based learning and what teachers are doing, and a lot of the teachers kept driving back to that, what's the evidence, what's your data, and one person in the crowd said, "Are your kids glowing?" And they're like, what do you mean? Are they glowing? Like, are they excited? And they want it and they want to continue to do it. And yeah, yeah, and they're like, that's a great indicator to continue to do what you're doing, yeah, the kids will tell you definitely that they want more. We know that there's been a lot of movement around the America Succeeds, right? The durable skill wheel and all of that, and that's entered and starting to enter into a lot of our school systems, our school districts, and people are asking, do we teach these skills? How do these skills evolve, right? That educator thinking. Where are you seeing that type of an alignment with the work that you guys do? It's a very natural fit, right? You've been doing this for years, and all of a sudden, here comes the wheel with all. Talk a little bit about how that fits with what you guys do.
I'll say that, we've called it all sorts of things. We had, when I was working on graduate profiles for Middle States accreditation 15 years ago, we were calling it 21st century skills, soft skills, durable skills, future ready skills. And in any articulation of those skills or iteration, there is a lack of opportunities in classroom and curriculum to really develop those skills in ways that make sense for kids to connect to, like, life after high school. But what we do, we rely heavily on work-based learning for that like light bulb a moment where a student has a future, right? Is I'll take problem solving as an example. So problem solving is, yeah, you can work through a math problem in math class, that's problem solving, or you can put a different name to it, design thinking. Lenovo calls it design thinking, and we have an event every year. Lenovo is a corporate partner of NAF, and we're really thankful to them for hosting students on site each year for a day of activities that we call Girls Belong in Tech. And one of those activities is a workshop around design thinking. And a product manager on the research and design team runs that activity, having students brainstorm around 2 or 3 different points how to create a product. And the students, you can see, like, the wheels churning, and the thinking and the excitement, and, like, whoa, the moment where they present the solution to any number of problems. I mean, there's some really, really cool ones, like how does Taylor Swift, what can we do to make Taylor Swift's concert more sustainable? Use more sustainable materials or something. And these kids are brainstorming solutions, and they come up with them in 15 minutes time. They remember that moment, and they know, wow, I never thought how effective it was to talk in a group and have a whiteboard and brainstorm out things together. That's a moment they'll remember for their whole lives, and it's, like, applicable to, call it whatever you want, future ready skills, durable skills, map, whatever the graph says. So I think there are it's the beautiful part about work-based learning is that it all happens quite organically. Like, I don't ever remember someone saying to me, Megan, you have to work on your 21st century skills, or, like, it's time, we're going to stop class on, stop chemistry class. Let's put the periodic table aside, and now let's focus on this graph that says that you should be developing your interpersonal skills. Like, this is just a very organic way for kids to develop their work-based learning. That is a very organic way for kids to develop those skills.
Yeah, and I would say, one of the things that we have a certification called NAF track certification. And it's basically NAF's seal of readiness for students. And part of that is participation in work-based learning through the whole continuum. But the ending piece of that is, having a work-based learning activity in the career preparation phase. So that's internship, apprenticeship, a health science clinical, a mentored industry project, where students are spending a longer period of time, 80 hours or more in a work-based learning experience where they're, working on actual workplace stuff, right? And the employer partner who's supervising or mentoring that student signs off on their skill development across those future ready skills or durable skills. I think the hardest thing with durable skills is they're not easily quantified, right? Like that's what employers have been looking for so long, to be like, I want to know that student, when they come in, that they can work collaboratively.
Yeah.
How do you know that? Like, you can't say like, oh, they have a college degree, so they've collaborated well before, like there's no proxy for that. It's a real trial and error, which I think is where, like, when you get to college internships, often that internship is an opportunity to, go into full-time employment afterwards because it's a trial period for them. But as a high school student, you need that exposure to even know what it is that, you need to know before you get into that space. And so I think, with the durable skills movement, I think it was important research that they did to comb through all of those skills that employers are hiring for and know that 7 out of 10 of those skills, when we're talking about the skills gap, it's not coding. It is the actual uniquely human part of being an employable person. And I think it's a shift that it's going to have to change. And we're going to see more people focused on how do we make sure durable skills are put into curriculum, so that it's not just, as Megan, you were mentioning, like, all right, today we're going to stop right now, we're going to do communication.
Right.
Like, it's a natural part of what we do, but how do we do that more intentionally, and how do we give students the language of, like, calling it out and saying, hey, this is working collaboratively. When you're talking about it on your resume, you're talking about it in an interview. This is kind of the language that you use to let employers know that you can do this.
Yeah.
And that conversation, that ability to translate what I've learned into a skill set that I can speak to. That's one of a key takeaway for educators who want to develop their work-based learning program. That's a key piece. Again, that interaction and the continuum of activities that prepare students for that moment when they have to present themselves as a candidate for opportunity, and where they have to network for opportunity. As Brooke said, networking, the connections that you have are almost always going to be the way that you land a job. And so, and that's counterintuitive to the way that the system, nobody in particular, treats students in school. Students are students. They're learners, but we don't think about them as humans venturing off. And so I do think that we have to shift the way that we teach to incorporate more opportunities for students to behave like humans.
Yeah. I agree. I agree 100%. And some of the work that I've been doing with schools, we've recognized that our system has been conditioned and structured in a sense of an A to Z design. And a lot of what we're talking about here and what we need when we talk about problem solving, collaboration, and some of those durable type skills that really sustain us in our jobs, right, is a Z to A approach, where we put our students in classrooms in collaboration approaches to start with the problem and what do you need for resources to figure this out. And our educational system has been so designed the opposite. We provide with the information, we let them practice, and we usually then test them on it. And that's just, that's just not, the way the real world functions. So I love all the great information you're providing, because it is really, I'll be able to play some of this to those schools when I get in front of them and go, here, listen to this. This is what Z to A is. where kids can really learn those durable skills through that process. But let's do this because we could talk all day. I'm looking down at the time. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're almost an hour in already. Tell us a little bit more about NAF. How, maybe, where does it exist? Maybe in Wisconsin, Midwest area. How can schools get involved with this? Give us a little bit of some of that great stuff.
Sure, yeah. I mean, Brooke shared that NAF is present in 34
Yeah,
states, including Puerto Rico. In case you're just want to make a move, we can support you in Puerto Rico as well. We are involved regionally. We have a presence in Milwaukee. We support Milwaukee Public Schools
that's
in
great.
their CTE programming. Much of their program is based on the NAF design, even for schools that are not NAF schools. In fact, really cool thing happening in Milwaukee is that the state of Wisconsin has granted them permission to use our work-based learning tracker as their work-based learning tracking
Yeah,
tool.
yeah,
And so that we are really excited about that because that means that the state is seeing value in what we have, and we care about that, folks, because we have to fund CTE work, and and the state has a lot to do with the allocation of those resources for
right.
CTE programs, even if that funding is coming from federal sources like Perkins. So we're really excited to kind of monitor that pilot of the work-based learning tracker as the state reporting tool. And additionally, we're really excited about what's going on. I'm going to say, like, regionally, across the pond in West Michigan, we have a huge increase in what we call year of planning academies that are participating in our year of planning to launch next year. Michigan provided state appropriated funds to do this work. And so that's really kind of exciting, and not too far removed from where you guys are, as we say, across the pond, right? That's the way
Right,
we talk
right.
about West Michigan to
The other
Wisconsin.
ocean, we call it.
So the support that we provide is around developing, I'm going to say, building, bolstering, and branding your CTE programs. And your programs may be in different stages. So you might have a program that you have well structured, but you don't know how to amplify what's going on to your community in that program. You may have an incredible class of students that's really committed to this work, and you want to turn that coursework into a program of study. That's another area where we lean in to support. You may be trying to think about how you take the work that you're doing in your classroom and build it out to be really a true program of study, in the sense that there is work-based learning and community partners through an advisory board that are impacting the way that program is built. We lean in on that work. So Brooke mentioned those 4 areas of the NAF design: academy development and art structure, the second advisory board, the third program of study, and the fourth work-based learning. So we kind of work around these 4 pillars to identify where your program is and where it has potential to grow and go. And then we provide you with some of the reporting metrics to support the identification of that growth and the pathway that you take to make this work happen. For those that are interested in growing their CTE pathway, reaching out to us, you can certainly visit our website, naf.org. That sounds very sales pitchy, but that is one way of contacting us. I imagine that our contact information, Brooke, and my contact information will be shared here, and I welcome you to reach out to me, and we can put you in touch with our colleagues who work with brand new academies. I am one of them. I work with schools in Michigan, in Wisconsin, and in your fellow across the pond there, Michigan. So I'm very much so aware of what's going on, like in terms of policy in Wisconsin related to CTE work and how to develop those programs that will meet some sort of state standard and district standard. So feel free to reach out for further conversation around that work.
Yeah, and in the interim, if you're, still wanting to learn a little bit more about us, as Megan mentioned, NAF.org is a great place. There's, we call it the Academy Support Hub. It's on the top right of the NAF.org site. And we offer a lot of free and publicly available tools and resources. So everything from how do I build an advisory board, how do I keep my advisory board engaged, to how do I elevate my work-based learning, and how do I, ask the right questions about, is my work-based learning, providing that student impact of aspiration, skills, and connections. So we have a lot of stuff that is free and publicly accessible, and it gives you a little taste of what we do, in addition to our, support and data tools and things like that we offer as well.
Yeah, you guys offer some really, really solid and great resources. I share your website when I'm working with districts and anytime that I'm doing any kind of a workshop for our state. And I really, really like the direction that we are going in our state, and it's greatly needed. You identify the foundational components of what you have there. I love what Karen Smith in our state, I'm sure you probably know the name, considering that you're a part of the tracker. And what we're attempting to do really right now is moving mindsets a little bit. How do we move away from this being a product, like we call it ACP, where, we have to have this plan done where, foundationally, this is a part of your school system. And really, that's what NAF offers to help you get to that. All the resources, the opportunity, the experiences. You've been doing this a long time. I think it's just great work. And the fact that you're in MPS, Milwaukee Public Schools, I think that just says a lot about even NAF and just, where we're at. I recognize that you guys are somewhat paired up, but with Dan Gonzalez in District C. He was just he virtually came into a workshop that I had, and he spoke on NAF even at that point. So we're hoping that we can help promote it, move you guys forward even more, because it is the right work. It's what we need for our students. So I certainly appreciate it. I also want to mention real quick before we cut ties here and move on, is that this spring you guys are going to be involved. Megan's going to get up here to cold Wisconsin. We might have still a foot of snow on the ground when you get here in April, the end of April 29th and 30th, where we're going to run our conference. The Future is Clear, Teach Like It's 2045, an unconference where it's going to be more interactive. Hopefully we'll have an opportunity to share, NAF and the great work even again then, and let people understand how they can get more connected and involved with NAF. So we're really excited about that. Certainly appreciate you guys getting involved with that. And anything else I can do moving forward to help spread your footprint here in our state, I definitely want to help. So
we're just here. We're here to help. So
yeah,
whether you become a NAF Academy or not, like we really care about making sure that all students get the supports that they need. So reach out.
It is the right work. It definitely is the right work. We're seeing that. All right. I always ask one final question towards the end or at the end. And that is our tag, right? Is the future is clear. Teach like it's 2045. So, what do you see education being in the year 2045?
I am hopeful that school in 20 years will look very different from what it looks like now, which has kind of been the same type of thing for 100 years, right? And I think, I imagine that students are getting more work-based learning, getting more opportunities to explore what careers and what opportunities are out there as part of kind of school, built into school, and not just for some kids. It's for all kids, whether you're going to college, whether you're going to a community college, four-year college, post-secondary program of some kind, you're going into armed services, whatever you're doing, making sure that students are actually prepared for their next step.
Yeah, I think I agree. I hope that by 2045 we have a solution to the teacher shortage. And I bring this up here because work-based learning is very much so related to CTE, the CTE field, and there are so many wonderful CTE teachers out there, and I'm hopeful that the great work that they're doing will inspire even more folks from industry to come to education, to work with students, and those coming out of college to consider a career in teaching. We know, teachers can make or break a program, and I think if there's one thing that next to worrying about students themselves, I think the one thing about education that I'm worried about, and really related to CTE, is just that, that those experts in the content area who can teach students. So hopefully we will have found the solution to that problem. And I do envision a world where the data points that we use to measure success are not so connected to some of the traditional metrics that we've used, and they are inclusive of some of the metrics that, say, NAF thinks are valuable in terms of measuring student success.
Right. Yeah, that would all be wonderful. I'm sure we're going to move that direction with the fine work you guys are doing. Certainly appreciate it. Well, I want to thank both of you for taking the time today and joining me. A lot of great information to share out. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. As we depart, remember, the future is clear. Take care.